It's a very interesting point because on the face of it, there's not really a sort of direct correlation between content marketing and your sort of like web presence and sort of dealing with the crisis. If anything, some people, especially some C-suite people, may want less of a presence if there is sort of a crisis out there. But I'm definitely of the school of thought of being more present and being more open and transparent in whatever ways you can. I know sort of we've spoken about before, so, good way sort of through a crisis, sort of communicate often, and even if you don't know the answer, sort of sharing that kind of advice. And in the same kind of vein, rather than sort of like trying to hold back and keep things internally, which sometimes might be the case, there's definitely part of the world, B2B and B2C now, that is really concentrated on being open and sharing that information. Obviously, there's levels, as I said, of what you do want to share. I think there's becoming that sort of trusted voice, that kind of hate the phrase, but thought leader in your space. Doesn't necessarily need to be a thought leader. Trusted voice, I think, is an equally good phrase. And just making sure you're one of the people that sort of people think of for that particular service, product, location, organization. So that could be something to do with healthcare, could be something to do with policing, your background, or it could be something to do with a group of pubs or hotels. Just making sure you have a presence of sorts, and that presence is representative of who you are. So if the time comes when people are there is an issue, there is a crisis, then when they do look for you online, that presence is representative of you. Visibility, really. So making sure that if you are a organization in a certain sector or location, geographic area, that you're found for those words. So one of the sort of ways that you could do this is through sort of like some foundational keyword research. Now, it seems like a big sort of scary phrase, so similar to SEO, but they're not really. They're just sort of quite practical, process-driven, data-driven tools to help you consider what other people find you for, your audiences may find you for. So, for example, you may be university, and you may want to be found for certain phrases that you're trying to attract students in. Obviously, maybe like 16-year-olds upwards or more mature students. But actually, another audience would be stakeholders, or another audience would be people in your, the CSR sort of like world, or sustainability, or the parents of these children. So for them to have the experience and knowledge that you're a safe, understanding, welcoming, warm place. Equally, if it was let's say, hotel chain, if you want a better group, that you are sort of like being found for those things. So it might not be hotels in the area, but it might be accommodation. It might be alternatives to B&Bs. It might be a whole host of phrases that when you do this research, usually through paid tools, there are some sort of free versions out there, but usually the depth to go to of looking at competitors and other peers in your marketplace, just to see what people are searching for on the internet. That's the key thing. What you or what we think people are looking for isn't necessarily the same words that other people are searching for. So just having that visibility and that view of what other people are looking for can be really valuable. And then you've got to blend that with what you want to be found for. It's not saying take those phrases, put them front and center on your website or front and center in your organization. Just make sure that you're aware of what other people call the kind of world that you work in. So beforehand, it's all the stuff sort of spoken about. So make sure you're being found for the right phrases. You know what other people are searching for, and that's sort of like built into your communications generally. But also for if you know something's going to be coming up, that not necessarily could be an issue, but just to mitigate anything, make sure you've got something about events that are taking place. You've got something about potential contentious issues that might be happening. So preempt it to make sure that people are aware of it on your own platforms. You own the communications, you own the tone of voice. You can say what you want to get across. But also that could be a launch pad for sharing it with other people. So that could be with sort of like shared media, and like social could be through email communications. It's a base for you to send things, but also for sort of third parties. So whether that could be media or other stakeholders, councils, things like that. The sort of element for afterwards, again, is kind of the flip side of that. So if something does happen, heaven forbid, make sure you've got all your crisis comms obviously ready to go and in place, but don't be adverse to putting something out there. A lot of times there is holding phrases and holding sort of communication that you can put out there, but make sure that maybe just after that, or maybe when you've got enough information, to just share a bit of that. If it's something you would share if someone sort of called up, then consider why you wouldn't sort of put that out there for a wider audience. That's not saying you should, but as a consideration, and then that can help with from a sort of SEO kind of point of view. If people are searching for that thing, you're going to capture much more of that traffic rather than leave it up to somebody else to tell your story. It's yeah, can be a complicated beast, but I think there's definitely something to be said for putting your own version of events across and using SEO and your own platform, your website, as a way to do that. I mean, all of this stuff is, I've sort of from SEO and content marketing point of view, I've sort of worked in agencies, but sort of been self-taught since having Authentic. I've dived into it a bit deeper. It's just another channel. So I try and sort of go through a lot of the projects and clients I work with a channel neutral and sector agnostic point of view. So it doesn't really matter about the sector or necessarily the channel. It's more about what's the challenge you've got and how can you sort of address those audiences sort of as directly or from different ways more effectively. So in terms of things such as SEO, keyword research, is things which are probably seen as social media was a few years ago, like quite a sort of scary thing to dip into, and now kind of everyone's doing it and there's multiple platforms. I think it's another sort of string to your bow. And if you can understand and harness the power of it or be aware of it at a base level, then it's not as big and scary as some people think. And some agencies do sort of like, confuse. And I've been in that situation myself, in-house and agency side, where there's been things explained and I've sort of felt not too sure about how I can sort of ask about it, or kind of not confident enough to put my hand up. Whereas actually, if you just have that base level of understanding of, that's what it is, okay, you can go to an expert if you need to, but at least you're a little bit more informed about it. I think the real thing for me to press, it sounds like a bit of a broken record, but is that keyword research. You can get so many ideas from undertaking this sort of like audit of your website, competitors, peers, and consider what people are talking about in your space. Now, pinch of salt with that, it's a data point, same as Google Analytics, same as anything that we do, same as a research piece. It's linking all these things together where the strength comes from. But the thing that keyword research does do is gives you an idea of different options and different ways people talk about things. So, for example, let's just take your background, say policing. It might be called the force, might be called policing, might be called police, might be called fuzz, might be called 100 different sort of like phrases, you know what I mean? And you've got to consider what all those are, the validity of all those for your organization, and how you can then use SEO. If people are searching for things like, how do I report a crime in Manchester, for example? It's going to a less crisis issue, but you've got to make sure that people can find you for the right words. It's not the be all and end all. It's not the savior of everything. And definitely in terms of crises, it can't help you in that very moment. There are things you can do before and after that I think can help sort of bookmark and help you own that space a bit more.